Sony entered the PlayStation 5 generation in a position most companies only dream about. The PlayStation 4 wasn't just successful, it was dominant. Over 100 million units sold, a first party lineup that defined the generation, and a reputation for delivering polished cinematic single player experiences that players trusted without hesitation. Sony didn't win the PS4 era by chasing trends or flooding the market with experiments. They won by being focused, confident, and disciplined. That's why what happened next during the PS5 era is so baffling, because instead of refining a winning formula, Sony pivoted hard into an acquisition and strategy spree that has produced instability, cancellations, and one of the weakest first party outputs in modern PlayStation history. As the PS5 launched, Sony appeared to be reacting more than leading. Microsoft's aggressive buying campaign dominated headlines, and rather than continuing to play to their strengths, Sony followed with a wave of studio acquisitions that looked impressive on paper but lacked a cohesive long term vision. Studios like Housemarque, Bluepoint, Firesprite, Firewalk, and Haven were brought under the PlayStation banner in rapid succession, capped off by the massive $3.6 billion purchase of Bungie. Individually, many of these studios were talented and respected, but acquisitions only matter if they result in shipped games, consistent output, and clear direction. In the PS5 era, Sony's acquisitions have largely failed on all three fronts. The clearest sign something had gone wrong was Sony's sudden obsession with live service games. PlayStation built its brand on authored, self contained experiences, yet during the PS5 generation, Sony announced plans to release a dozen live service titles within just a few years. That wasn't an evolution of the brand, it was a radical departure from it. Live service development is expensive, risky, and time consuming, and it requires a fundamentally different studio culture than traditional single player development. Sony pushed studios into this space without the infrastructure, experience, or patience required, and the results have been disastrous. Multiple live service projects were canceled outright after years of development, others were rebooted, and several studios found themselves restructuring or downsizing before ever releasing a meaningful product. The Bungie acquisition was supposed to justify this entire strategy. Sony didn't buy Bungie for exclusives or prestige. They bought Bungie for expertise, specifically in managing long term live service games. But instead of Bungie elevating Sony's internal efforts, Sony inherited Bungie's problems. Since the acquisition, Bungie has missed revenue targets, suffered high profile layoffs, delayed projects, and faced morale issues that directly contradict the idea that this was a stable, reliable cornerstone for Sony's future. A $3.6 billion purchase should have transformed PlayStation's output. Instead, it became a financial and operational liability that highlighted just how unprepared Sony was for the live service gamble. What makes this worse is the opportunity cost. Every canceled project represents years of developer time that produced nothing. Every studio reorganization slowed down production. Every strategic pivot reset development timelines. While Sony's teams were stuck chasing live service ambitions that never materialized, the PS5's release calendar quietly thinned out. This is a console that's been on the market for years, yet its first party output feels surprisingly sparse compared to the PS4 era. The games that do release are still high quality, but they arrive less frequently, and the gaps between major exclusives continue to grow. This has created a perception problem for PlayStation. The PS4 era felt constant, confident, and reliable. The PS5 era feels uncertain. Players don't know what Sony's priorities are anymore. Is PlayStation about cinematic single player games, or is it chasing engagement metrics and recurring revenue? Is Sony building for the long term, or scrambling to keep up with industry trends it never needed to follow in the first place? Brand identity matters, and right now, PlayStation's identity is less clear than it has been in decades. None of this means Sony is finished or incapable of course correction. They still have world class studios, incredibly talented developers, and some of the strongest IPs in the industry. But the PS5 era acquisition spree should stand as a warning. Buying studios doesn't guarantee success. Strategy without discipline leads to waste, and abandoning what made you successful in pursuit of trends often results in losing both. Sony didn't need to reinvent PlayStation this generation, they needed to protect it, and instead they overextended themselves chasing a future that hasn't paid off. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to see more long form analysis like this, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you want to directly support the channel, check out my Patreon where the latest exclusive is a full review of Resident Evil 4 and how it completely changed the direction of the franchise. Until next time, game on.